We are here today to discuss reintroduction of our crime package, and I want to take a moment to step backwards. In October, we stood outside at the Police Officers Memorial introducing a package of bills designed to protect the citizens of this state, designed to equip, protect, train, help bring more police out on our streets, to provide mental health services within our county jails, with the end goal of reducing this criminal plague, this scourge of violence that has hit the state of Illinois. That was in October, and we did it right before the veto session. We said, Democrats, we're here, we're in veto session, people are getting shot. I've had a school bus shot in my area, a school bus, think about that. I've had a police officer murdered, another police officer shot and seriously injured in my area. Just last month in Decatur, we had a police officer shot. That was in October. We said, we're here, let's do this now, let's take the violent criminals off our streets, let's take action. Nothing. Crickets. It has been 3 months since then. 3 months. Well, the General Assembly's back to work. It's time to take action. It is time, it is past time. How many more people need to be shot? How many cars need to be hijacked? How many more people need to be murdered before the Democrats in this building do something? Now, with that, we have several speakers today. We're going to talk a little bit about the revised package that we're introducing, but we also want you to hear from law enforcement. We want to hear from the men and women on the streets that are protecting us every day, who deserve our appreciation. And let me say this, first and foremost, I appreciate them. I stand with them, our caucus stands with them. We need to help them do their job safely so they can protect the rest of us and make our streets safe. We need to equip them, we need to train them, we need more of them. And we need to appreciate them. So we're going to hear from some of the men and women that have been there. You're going to hear about the fact that people are leaving law enforcement in droves. And we are not finding the next generation to come in, take their place as trainees, take their place out on the streets to replace these men and women of experience that are protecting us for years. So those are the things you're going to hear today. You're going to hear about our revised package, and you're going to hear from the men and women of law enforcement themselves. Last time we had Amber Oberheim here, whose husband was brutally murdered on his way to stop a domestic violence incident being committed by a multiple convicted felon. By the way, multiple domestic violence convictions, on his way to make us safe, to make our communities safer. 3 months since then, nothing from the Democrats. So we're reintroducing the package today. I'm going to have Senator Sue Rezin come up and talk a little bit about that package, and then we'll go down the list of speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rose, and good morning. I am Deputy Republican Leader Sue Rezin, and I would also like to thank our law enforcement who are here today. We stand with you and will continue to stand with you. Violent crime just isn't happening somewhere else. Carjackings in Cook County have jumped 300% since 2019. Murders are up 57% in Chicago, and major crimes in Chicago are already up this year. Yet crime isn't only hitting Cook County and Chicago. We're seeing it in our communities everywhere. It's real for everyone in every walk of life. And it's hitting the suburbs, it's hitting central Illinois, and it's hitting southern Illinois. In 2021, CBS News ranked Peoria as the 15th deadliest city in the U.S. And Chicago, not far behind, was ranked 28th deadliest city in the U.S. Champaign witnessed a 37% increase in shooting incidences in 2021 and a 60% increase in homicides. Even school buses that Senator Chapin-Rose talked about are not safe. Last fall, a school bus was sprayed by bullets in Champaign, Illinois. Thankfully, on that occasion, no children were hit. I have kids in Chicago. 3 kids live in Chicago of mine. Every time I see a news story about some senseless act of violence in the city, like a mother, I fear for their lives. My mind goes to those mothers who are struggling to get by in the highest crime areas. They're trying to raise their children in the middle of what sometimes feels a war zone. Gang violence, drug violence, and carjackings are an everyday part of their lives. We owe it to these mothers and fathers of this state to provide a safer place for them to raise their kids. Our first step in doing that is by supporting our police and enabling them to do their jobs. That's why we're here today. Today, we're announcing a package of proposals that first and foremost protect and support our law enforcement in our communities. We continue to develop our proposal from the fall that Senator Rose talked about to provide additional resources to law enforcement through the Fund the Police Act. This legislation would provide a direct infusion of $125 million to law enforcement that would provide funding for body cameras, for police training, for outreach and community policing programs, for hiring and rehiring of officers, and for mental health treatment for individuals who are incarcerated in our prisons. Additionally, we can no longer take it easy on those who commit violence against men and women serving to protect us. According to CNN, more police officers were intentionally killed last year than we've seen since the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Imagine that. We're putting forth legislation that will increase penalties for those who commit aggravated battery against our police officers and require them to serve at least 85% of their sentence. These measures are necessary to not only give law enforcement the tools that they need, but also to send a clear message. Go after our police, and there will be consequences. Next, I'd like to introduce Senator Mcclure.
Thank you, Leader Rezin. And as my colleague, Leader Rezin said, enabling our law enforcement to do their jobs is just the first step in curbing the violent crime in our streets. Our package also seeks to hold violent criminals accountable for their actions. We propose 10 to life sentences for violent gun offenses, 10 years for the first conviction, and life for subsequent convictions. We are also advocating for a mandatory minimum of 10 years for people providing guns to convicted felons. With carjackings tripling since 2019, our package ends the catch and release of juvenile offenders, who oftentimes are the ones committing carjackings because they are recruited by gangs who promise them little to no punishment if they get caught. Finally, we are calling for the repeal of the cash bail provisions found in the Democrats' anti-police package that they passed a year ago. Poorly thought out changes to bail were terrible for Cook County. They will be bad when they are spread to the entire state. Researchers estimate that following Cook County's implementation of its so-called bail reforms, the number of released defendants charged with committing new crimes increased by 45%. They also estimate that the number of pretrial releases charged with committing new violent crimes increased by an estimated 33%. No wonder Chicago, a storied American city, is now internationally known for its crime and violence. This is not a pattern we want to spread throughout the entire state. We need to empower judges with the tools they need to keep dangerous criminals behind bars. And these are reasonable proposals that specifically target major issues and needs within our communities. And they deserve a hearing. And now I'd like to introduce Senator Terry Bryant.
Thank you. Before I move to my, I have a few prepared remarks, but as I've listened to my colleagues here talking this morning, I just want to remind all of you that in the region where I live, just a few months ago, Deputy Sheriff Sean Riley from the Wayne County Sheriff's Department was shot to death when he stopped for what he thought was a distressed motorist. He was shot, and then his body was thrown into a ditch. That's just a few miles away from where my daughter and my grandchildren live, and where my son-in-law served as a deputy sheriff for Jefferson County for several years. Today, I don't know if my son-in-law would ever go back into law enforcement again, and that's because of the way we treat our law enforcement officers. And so I stand here today in support of what they do for us, for the fact that they put their lives on the line for us. Last January, the Democrats pushed through sweeping changes to our criminal justice system. They pushed through those changes in the middle of the night without public or law enforcement input. A year later, we can safely say that their my way or the highway approach has failed. Our law enforcement officers who put their lives on the line to keep us safe were cut completely out of the process. The governor and his legislative allies sent a clear signal. The voice of law enforcement were not welcome at the table. Left out in the cold, many have chosen to move on to friendlier communities, more welcome careers, and I know many who have completely moved out of the state of Illinois. The states that they go to welcome them in and say we have the best trained law enforcement in the country, and they're happy to get our law enforcement officials. According to the FOP statewide, we're looking at a 20% vacancy rate at police departments, some with higher vacancies rates and a few with lower. Since the passage of the Democrats' massive anti-police package, 18 sheriffs have stepped down. An additional 26 have chosen not to run for election this fall. Even Representative LaShawn Ford admits that the Democrats have given law enforcement, his quote, a bad hand. And who can blame them for moving on? These men and women who keep us safe no longer feel like they have the backing of their governor and his partisan allies. Our police officers risk their lives arresting dangerous criminals, but all too often these same criminals are released without charges or were mere slaps on the wrist. Sheriff Dart recently highlighted that approximately 100 charged murderers were recently released to home electronic detention or monitoring in Cook County. This just absolutely is not right. It's not protecting our communities. It's not protecting our children. Children like 7-year-old Jocelyn Adams from Chicago's West Side, who was shot and killed by a man out on electronic monitoring. Even Mayor Lightfoot admits that, quote, the system is fundamentally broken in a way that is making our cities unsafe, end of quote. The stats tell a very grim story. The story's one that our law enforcement community knows only too well. And today you can see behind me that we have many members of law enforcement that are here to join us in this today. They're here today to tell us their stories. You're going to hear it from their mouths. We have today with us, and I'm proud to introduce Sheriff Dave Hunt and Chris Southward from the FOP.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Hunt. I'm the retired sheriff of Piatt County. I spent 27 years with the sheriff's office and retired at the end of June of 2021. Chapin asked me to speak to you today about some reasons why I decided to retire before the end of my term of office. There has been a lot of negative media attention that has reflected poorly on law enforcement. The result caused disrespect and attacks on law enforcement officers across the country. Democrats made a decision to work on police reform here in Illinois. Some of these reforms caused uncertainty, and I felt that would have a negative impact on law enforcement officers. A few examples include the cost of unfunded mandates, including data storage, body cams, and training, all without financial assistance. As a sheriff, that means less money for officers on the street. Additionally, ending cash bail completely is a mistake, and that would make it harder to keep violent criminals off the street. My son is a sheriff deputy for almost 10 years with the Macon County Sheriff's Office. I worry every day about his safety. I also worry about Democratic legislation that is working against law enforcement instead of with them. Our officers need to know that they will be supported when they do their jobs. Departments are currently experiencing difficulties in recruiting new officers. More will continue to walk away from this job or retire early from this honorable career if something doesn't change. I support the legislation that Senator Rose and the Republicans are proposing today. I'd like to introduce Chris Southwood.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Southwood. I'm president of the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police, the largest organization of its kind here in Illinois, proudly representing over 34,500 public safety professionals all across the state. I'd like to thank the Senate Republicans for putting forth this anti-crime legislative package. And I think it's important to note that this is the second time they have put forth this type of legislation. Sadly, if the majority party had listened the first time, perhaps we could have avoided some of the senseless tragedies that have occurred, such as December 29th, when we lost two of our finest. Wayne County Sheriff's Deputy Sean Riley, who was responding to a motorist assist, and Bradley Police Officer Sergeant Marlene Ritmanick, responding to a barking dog complaint. These officers weren't just killed in the line of duty, they were executed. Enough. Enough of the war on police here in Illinois. Illinois has some of the finest, best-trained public safety law enforcement professionals in the nation. Chicago police officers, Illinois State troopers, sheriff's deputies, city officers, our correctional officers who have a truly difficult and thankless job. I'd put them up against any similar professions anywhere, any similar positions anywhere in the nation. We should all be proud of their dedicated professionalism. But we're losing them at historic levels. They're leaving the profession, and it's not just those who are taking early retirement. It's officers with 10 to 12 years on, the future leaders of their department. They're gone. Couple this with the historically low recruitment numbers, and at a time when we need it most, the public safety profession in Illinois is headed for disaster. Our current system under the Anything But Safety Act is failing all of us. Violent crime is surging unchecked in our communities all across the state. Enough. This legislative package, if passed, could be the beginning of a safer Illinois for all of us, citizens and public safety professionals alike. And again, I'd like to thank the Senate Republicans for putting it forth the second time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Senate Republican Leader Dan McConkey, and first of all, let me just say how much I appreciate what is that you do for us. I remember when I was in middle school thinking maybe I would become a police officer. I didn't do that. You did. You stepped up and are serving our communities in a way that so few do. So thank you very much for your willingness to do that. In early December, I was at an event in downtown Chicago when I was approached by a gentleman. He was a realtor. He proceeded to tell me that he was friends with the Chicago police officer Carlos Yanez Jr., who was shot in the line of duty. He was partner to slain police officer Ella French. This gentleman was the one who put together, you may have seen on the news, the clips of a big welcome party outside the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, as this gentleman, after 2 months of being in the hospital and being in rehab, finally was able to leave to go home to continue his rehab at home. And there was hundreds of people outside that hospital thanking him for his service. This realtor told me that he had put that together because he wanted Officer Yanez to know how much he was appreciated and loved for his sacrifice. He also told me that enough was enough. He told me that we need to keep fighting for them, that it is high time for us to undo the damage that has been done to our police. It is exactly right. It's time for us to let these officers to do their jobs, to protect our streets, our schools, our communities, and without the ongoing heightened fear for their own lives that so many of our officers are living with today. The Senate Republicans have been here, calling on our colleagues from across the aisle to work with us, to listen to the men and women who are on the streets combating this crime wave firsthand. But if they don't listen to us, then they should at least listen to people throughout the state who are begging for an end to the violence. To the mom who just lost her 8-year-old child to the senseless act in Chicago, or to the newly wedded wife of that Bradley police officer referred to a few minutes ago, whose husband nearly lost his life and is still on a long road to recovery. There is no excuse for us to go a single day further without addressing this. Look, we're not saying that we have all the answers to stop crime in its entirety, but what we are saying is we have good ideas, ideas that are derived from the law enforcement community itself, that are saying that this will put us on the path to safer neighborhoods and help us defend our police. The people deserve a government that is united in working to help them. So let's get that started today. With that, we'll take your questions.
I wonder. Well, first of all, they need to speed up the 10 and Life Act to get violent criminals off our streets, okay? They need to speed up. It's been 3 months. People are getting shot, killed, murdered. Let's talk about it. Chicago police officers dead. Bradley, Fairfield, that's Wayne County. My mom's a Fairfield mule from back in the day. Champaign, Decatur shot at. Let's talk about the men and women leaving for a second, okay? We don't have time. This is insane what's happening right now. Let's talk about just in my little neck of the woods. Champaign police, they're on their 3rd chief in 6 months. Decatur chief retired last month. Sheriff Hunt, where'd you go, Dave? Dave's right in the middle in Monticello between them. He retired early. 3 of my 10 sheriffs have retired early, not finishing the terms, retired early, all citing what happened in January and how it happened in January, okay? Let's talk about the fact that Urbana's just announced retirement. Let's talk about the fact that, one of the best cops I've ever met in my life, who's on CPD, one of the most wise, experienced officers they have, is retiring at the end of the month. Champaign Police's deputy chief retired last Friday. And you know what? Who's stepping up? Go talk to the mayors. Can they find recruits? Are the recruits they're getting ones that are able-bodied but also of sound mind enough to make the right decision in a split second? To make it the appropriate decision in a split second? Are they trained appropriately? You heard Sheriff Hunt. Let's talk about our program. This is the same thing, by the way, we filed 3 months ago. Money for body cameras, he just mentioned it. Money for law enforcement equipment to help our police be safe in the job that they do. $15 million for additional law enforcement training, $5 million for mobile training units. Training, so that those officers are safe in what they do in protecting us, and they come home to their families, but also so they make the right decisions when they're interacting with the public. Here's one, $37 million for hiring, retention, and recruitment of new men and women to serve to replace all these folks who are leaving. We can't wait. This is not a waitable moment. They've had 3 months to do anything. And I want to say one last thing on the whole Republican versus Democrat argument. I'm tired of it. Kids on a bus that were shot at were not Democrats or Republicans. They're kids.
Senator Rose, are you saying that Democrats simply don't care, or do they not have any kind of plan?
I'm telling you right now that they've had 3 months to act, 10 in life. Get the violent offenders off our streets. Give these men and women that put their lives on the line every day for us and the state's attorneys the ability to take the truly violent people off our streets. 10 in life. That was filed 3 months ago. Then let's equip them, train them, help them do their jobs. And finally, at the end of the day, folks, look, We know these sheriffs will all tell you every one of their jails has mental health issues that aren't violent criminals, but shouldn't be in the county jail either. We had money in there 3 months ago to help mental health treatment in our local county jails, and nothing. It's time for, where'd Chris go? Enough. It's time for action.
Senator Rose, these neighborhoods that you reference across the state, across Illinois, that have seen the most violence. A lot of residents who live in those neighborhoods just simply don't trust the police. And police officials, especially in Chicago, they say that trust of law enforcement is critical to reducing crime. So how do we gain trust of law enforcement in neighborhoods that are most besieged?
We also have money in our program for community policing, okay? For community policing. But at the end of the day, I don't know, when I talk to people, no matter what they are, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green, I don't care. They are sick of this. When I watch someone in Champaign, the city of Champaign say he doesn't feel it's safe to put his kid on a bike to go ride his bike down the street, that guy doesn't care about a Democrat or Republican. I mean, come on. Somebody else want to take a question?
Yeah, so I want to add something in because I was in the House, I was in the House when bill came through to end the fees that were funding the mobile training units. And in committee, I heard the person that was presenting that bill say, because we asked, what are you going to do about funding the mobile training units? And they said, oh, the governor has assured us that the money's going to be there for the mobile training units. Downstate, those mobile training units are the life stream. They're the one thing that we can get the training for our police officers. And guess what? That money for that training has not been put back in again. And I don't see any bill except ours that takes care of those mobile training units. I represent Carbondale, and I can tell you on a daily basis there are shootings in Carbondale. Mostly because they don't have enough police on the street. And I'm going to give you, in what I said to you, I gave you some Democrat names. Let me give you one more. Sheriff Bob Burns of Jackson County, where I live, in Murfreesboro. Sheriff Burns, when he saw the anti-police bill that was passed just in the dead of the night last year, looked at it. I had a friend that was standing right there with him, and he said, oh my God, what is this? There's no way that I can tell my guys to go out and do this stuff. That's a 30-plus year sheriff, Democrat from Jackson County. So this is all over the state, not just Champaign, not just Chicago, it's all over the state.
So, hang on. Bruce, Sheriff Kettlecamp from Christian wants to address the question a moment ago as well. But I also will tell you, and I'm going to steal this line from Senator Mcclure, a lot of that is fear-based. When you see that the law is not being enforced, and when you see that people are free to walk the streets to take revenge on someone who might turn them in, people are too afraid to talk to the police too. There's two sides of that equation. I know what you just said about trust, but a big chunk of that equation is fear because they know that no one is out there watching out for them, and it's not safe for them to give information about that murder that occurred the week before. Sheriff Kettlecamp from Christian County. And by the way, Shelby County Sheriff's a Democrat, and he retired early because of all this nonsense too.
First of all, I would like to thank everybody here today for supporting law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement for a long time, and it just what they did in the middle of the night for this anti-police bill, I felt like we have nobody that's got our back. But after reading the bill and seeing what they're doing here, they have our back, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. But your comment, I just wanted to say that the citizens of Christian County, which is a rural county, really appreciates what law enforcement does. They're behind us. They didn't appreciate what was done in the passing of the anti-police bill at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we have violent crimes that happen in a rural county in Christian County. Not long ago, we had a murder on the courthouse grounds from somebody being shot. So we need tools to do our job. We took that oath to protect and serve. And by what they did at 3 o'clock in the morning, it makes our job very, very difficult. And we've lost a lot of good cops because of that bill being passed at 3 o'clock in the morning.
In your opinion,
Why is, I'm sorry.
We're seeing the rise in crime and violence and police shootings right now.
Well, I think it's many, many reasons. A lot of it's got to do with drugs, but I think a lot of the shooting has got to do with a lot of these video games where all they're doing is shooting cops. But again, there's no respect a lot of places for law enforcement, but there is in Christian County. And I think throughout the state there's a lot of respect for law enforcement, but there isn't when they pass an anti-crime bill at 3 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
We're talking about several proposals that didn't get a chance several months ago. You'll start to have a new meeting shortly here. What will you do to convince your Democratic colleagues that these deserve a chance in both chambers and to actually get a hearing in that?
So one of the things I think is really important is that we're in a building that is designed to have a functioning democracy, and that is to have debate. And that is what we've asked for the last 3 months. Let's put these bills out there, let's debate them, let's talk about the merits of the issues. Maybe there's modifications to our legislation that needs to take place. But the problem at this point is that as of yet, we still do not have a debate. None of these bills get assigned to committee, or if they get assigned, they don't get a hearing. This is the problem. We're here for the debate. We want to be included in a part of that. That's what we're asking for, not just on this issue, but on many issues. To date, we don't have that. I'm not sure what they're afraid of.
The governor's downplaying this as election year politics. He says he's increasing funding for state police, hiring for state police. Do you think that's out there?
I think it's important to look at the bigger picture here if you want to talk about the governor. So the governor, we sent a letter to the governor, I think it was now a couple of years ago. The governor started commuting the sentences of child murderers. We're talking the worst of the worst. He has then put in place a prisoner review board that has not faced Senate confirmation, that has been freeing child murderers, child rapists, the worst of the worst, against the wishes of the family. He has signed this anti-police bill, pro-crime bill, to wreak havoc on this state. So the entire atmosphere here is one that has been anti-police, anti-victim, and pro-crime, and the results speak for themselves.
I want to say one thing. I will tell the governor this. Those kids on the school bus can't vote for anybody. They can't vote for him, they can't vote for Bail, they can't vote for anybody. What the hell is he going to tell those kids on the school bus?